And now for something completely different. Imminent Victory by Stormraven24. It wasn't the cozy decor of her quarters that sent a nearly forgotten sensation coursing through the veins. It wasn't the fear of her shitting hosts, so strong she could almost taste it. It wasn't the power she exuded over them, or even the fact that she held the upper hand in this entire power play. No. It was the thought of imminent victory that made her skin tingle and her blood run hot. There was little Ventress could do now that wouldn't blow her cover and tip the balance in favor of the Jedi. The Nautolan, although surely nearby, was inconsequential. The only one that mattered was Kenobi. She shivered at the thought of his very name. Alone in her provided room, she could let her hate for the arrogant human express itself freely. Among the Qing, she was an emissary of Count Dooku and of the Sith. A little hate was good, and even useful, but it always needed to be controlled. Show too little, and none would take you seriously and try to block you at every turn. Show too much, and your allies would run and hide for fear that it would be directed toward them, let alone having it blind your focus and bring about your ruin. But right now, none of that mattered. For these 2 brief moments, Ventress could afford her indulgence. It was lust that had found its way back into her heart. It made her skin burn. Her fitted leggings were tossed against a wall, thoughts of finally having Kenobi at her mercy flitting across her mind. Her tight shirt quickly became too constricting. A sound of relief and pleasure escaped her lips as her heavy breasts were free once she pulled the zip of the top open. Ventress would have been surprised to find her nipples already hard and erect, if not for the sudden mental image of Kenobi in chains stealing her attention. Another noise, this one deeper and louder than the last, worked its way from her mouth. She raised herself onto her knees on the bed and squeezed one full breast. The pressure and stimulation amplified the rush of arousal that began building low in her belly the longer she imagined the aftermath of her victory. What would she do to him first, she thought. Her free hand slipped down her abdomen and through a split in her skirts. The cut of the fabric was more for practicality's sake, to give her more freedom of movement during a fight, but it certainly had other advantages. Perhaps she would taunt him, mock him with words before she moved on to the physical part. Her fingertips lighted on that hypersensitive bud above her folds as her imagination progressed. She would present Kenobi to Dooku first, of course. Anything less was unthinkable. Then her master would gift him to her as a reward for her good work. Once in her grasp, Kenobi would quickly learn just how fast and hard even the most revered Jedi could fall under her ministrations. The fear that he never showed, yet she knew was there, would rear its head when she closed her hands around his throat. She would whisper every lie he held dear with such disdain that he would finally see his pathetic life for what it was. His pulse would quicken, wondering if she would choke the life from him once she'd had her say. But of course, he knew her better than that. Why would I grant you a swift death? She would coo so sweetly in his ear when I could have so much more fun breaking you. Ventress's mind was no longer rooted in the physical plane. She was all primal instinct now. The speed of her fingers over and between her pulsing sex increased with each new thought. Perspiration began to form on her flushed skin with her exertions. Her focus was now on the future and all deliciously wonderful things it held for her. First, Kenobi would look upon her with that condescending pity she'd seen from him one time too many. That pity would turn into agonized anger as his flesh split beneath her nails, his skin bruising with the blows she would deliver both physically and through the Force. She wouldn't break his bones, though. They took too long to heal and tended to drown out everything else. Besides, she had something far more permanent in mind. By the time she would gently touch her lightsabers to his skin, forever marking him as hers, no matter if he remained chained with her or somehow got free, Kenobi would look upon her with hate. That, more than anything, would be the sweetest vengeance. That hate would devolve into fear when she closed the Force around his heart and squeezed, just as she had done to the Jedi Fae on Quatea. He would beg for his life before too long, and that would be just as good. But her greatest victory, her crowning glory that would be perfectly orgasmic, would be that moment when she would fist her fingers into that lovely hair, pull his head towards hers, press a kiss to his cheek, and whisper, "I win." His name fell from her lips in a shout as sweet, aching release shook Ventress's body. The mental picture of Kenobi's newfound hatred melting into terror, then into utter despair and hopelessness, drew out her orgasm to the point of pain. When it finally, sadly, passed, she was left gasping for breath, her skin burning and her sex throbbing. It had been far too long since she'd felt such pleasure, and cutting down Jedi after Jedi came close, but only the thought of breaking Kenobi so wholly and irreparably brought her to completion. A corner of the lush sheets cleaned her fingers and the juncture of her thighs once she had regained her senses. A certain kind of peace fell over her as she sprawled back on the bed, languid and satisfied beyond measure. Although temporary, she knew, Ventress fully intended to savor the moment while she could. Perhaps the sensation would continue and keep her blood-drenched nightmares at bay for a while. Yes, hate was good. Hate kept her alive on Ratatak. Hate had brought her very far indeed, but victory over Obi-Wan Kenobi would be her highest achievement. Morale among the Jedi would plummet when they realized just how weak they all were if the great Kenobi could be broken. Republic forces would follow, then support by Republic citizens and its allies, until the galaxy crumbled beneath the heel of the Sith. Yes, that was all well and good, but all of that was secondary. In the end, all that mattered was Kenobi, bloody, broken, and defeated at her feet. Sleep began to envelop her then, a soothing and warm feeling no doubt brought on by the powerful orgasm. This time, Ventress welcomed it like a lover rather than an enemy. A smile played on her lovely mouth as more thoughts of Kenobi and his downfall swirled through her mind. This time, she would have him. She could feel it in her very bones. Before she left this forsaken hunk of rock, Kenobi would be hers one way or another.